The deportation of 14 West Africans from the United States to Ghana has ignited a heated debate, raising serious questions about the legality and morality of such actions. But here's where it gets controversial. These individuals were not sent back to their actual home countries, but rather to Ghana, a nation where some face the threat of persecution or torture, according to their legal representatives. This story first came to light last week, prompting U.S. lawyers to file a lawsuit challenging the deportations. They argue that the U.S. government deliberately bypassed immigration laws designed to protect these men from being returned to places where their safety could be compromised. The legal battle highlights a troubling tactic allegedly used by the Trump administration to sidestep its own rules. On Monday, Felix Kwakye-Ofosu, Ghana's Minister for Government Communications, confirmed to the Associated Press that all 14 men, 13 Nigerians and 1 Gambian, have since been sent onward to their respective home countries. However, he did not specify the exact timing of these transfers. Legal experts see this as yet another example of the Trump administration deporting individuals and then distancing itself from the fallout. The case draws uncomfortable parallels to that of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador despite a court order preventing it. The administration then claimed it was unable to bring him back, exposing a pattern of questionable deportation practices. Faced with immigrants who cannot be legally returned to their countries due to ongoing immigration proceedings or protections, the Trump administration has increasingly turned to sending them to third countries. These are nations with which the U.S. has forged agreements to accept deportees, often without the full consent or knowledge of the individuals involved. The lawyers representing 5 of the West African men filed a lawsuit last Friday, asserting that these men had legal safeguards preventing their deportation to their home countries because of credible fears of torture or persecution. The complaint, brought forward by Asian Americans Advancing Justice, emphasized that the men had been granted fear-based relief and urgently requested a court order to stop their deportations immediately. In response, a U.S. federal judge on Saturday demanded that the government clarify what measures it was taking to ensure Ghana would not transfer these individuals elsewhere, potentially violating U.S. court orders. The agreements with so-called third countries like Ghana are part of a broader, aggressive immigration crackdown aimed at deporting millions from the United States. But Department of Justice attorney argued that the judge lacked authority over how another sovereign nation treats deportees. The lawyer referenced a recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling that upheld the administration's right to send immigrants to countries other than their own, even if those immigrants had not been able to express fears of torture beforehand. Lee Gallant, an attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union representing the men, described the situation as reeking of a scam. He condemned the U.S. government for knowingly placing these individuals in grave danger despite court orders, accusing it of orchestrating a scheme to use third countries as a loophole to circumvent legal protections. The lawsuit also detailed harrowing conditions endured by the deportees, including being restrained in straitjackets for 16 hours during their flight to Ghana and being held in deplorable conditions upon arrival. Meanwhile, Ghana has pushed back against accusations that accepting these deportees equates to endorsing President Trump's immigration policies. At a press conference in Accra, Ghana's Foreign Minister Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa emphasized that Ghana received no financial compensation from the U.S. for accepting the deportees. He explained the government's decision as a humanitarian effort to alleviate the suffering of fellow West Africans, clarifying that the agreement with the U.S. is limited strictly to accepting West African nationals. Nigeria's government expressed frustration over not being informed about its citizens being sent to Ghana. While Nigeria has accepted deportees directly from the U.S. in the past, it has rejected the idea of other nationals being deported into Nigeria. Kimedi Imomotimi Ebienfa, a spokesperson for Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, told the AP that Nigeria has not refused its own nationals, but opposes the deportation of non-Nigerians into the country. The Gambian authorities did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Importantly, none of the 14 deportees were originally from Ghana, and the 5 men involved in the lawsuit had no connections to Ghana, nor had they designated it as a potential country for removal, according to the legal complaint. Critics and human rights advocates argue that the Trump administration is strategically targeting countries most affected by its policies on trade, migration, and foreign aid to accept these deportees. Ghana joins other African nations like Eswatini, Rwanda, and South Sudan in receiving migrants deported from the U.S. to third countries, a practice whose legality remains hotly contested by lawyers and human rights groups. This unfolding situation raises critical questions. Is it ethical for a country to deport individuals to third nations where their safety is uncertain? Should international agreements allow for such practices? Or do they undermine the very protections immigration laws are meant to uphold? What responsibilities do receiving countries have in safeguarding the rights and well-being of deportees? We invite you to share your thoughts. Do you believe the U.S. government is justified in using third countries for deportations? Or is this a dangerous loophole that puts vulnerable people at risk? How should countries like Ghana navigate these complex diplomatic and humanitarian challenges? Join the conversation and let us know your perspective.